This is going to sound extremely petty, and I want you to know that I know that. In December of 2013, first of all, I like to think about where I was in the context of my academic career. It was year 6. So what does that mean? That means I was up for tenure. I had, in fact, turned my tenure file in. I had turned my book manuscript in. I hope all of you have or will experience a moment like that where you've done a lot of work, but you get to this moment where you've sort of done the thing. But then what are you doing with your time? Because you can't start a new thing, because that hasn't gotten there yet. But also I had spent so many years working on this book. It was my dissertation topic too. So here I was, February 2013, Monday morning in a Chicago suburb. I wake up, I feed my kids breakfast, I log on to the internet, first on my phone, I read the news, and the Pope has retired. And I get really, really mad. And the reason I get mad is that everyone is, no one knew, I don't know if you remember, but no one knew the Pope was going to retire. It was a surprise. And surprise news is an opportunity to jump in, particularly if you have something to say that people are missing. So what were they missing? When the Pope retired, editors or journalists needed to file reports saying the Pope was retired, and they needed to give it a little context, and no one knew anything yet. So they jumped on Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever and looked up papal retirements. And the last one was from the 15th century, this Pope named Gregory. And everyone said, all the journalists saying, this Pope named Gregory, that's the one. We've got him right there, Gregory the 12th in 1415. And that is true and totally irrelevant, because the 15th century retirement was a negotiated settlement to resolve schism. But in the 13th century, at the end of the 13th century, there was an old pope, Pope St. Celestine V, who was a hermit. He was made pope. He didn't like it. He wanted to go back. He checked in with his chief lawyer. Hey, can I retire? No one's ever done that before. The chief lawyer said, sure, you can retire. Benedict then retires, the canon law gets in place, he tries to go back to his mountain place, and the chief lawyer becomes a new pope and throws him in jail. So, amazing story. And if, for example, you had spent the last, let's say, 15 years becoming an expert in 13th century Italy, which I had, you would be a little grumpy that everyone's talking about this totally less interesting 15th century story. So it's Monday morning, I'm mad, my kids are eating breakfast, I'm sitting at the table, I'm reading on my phone and then on my laptop, and I'm mad. And I put that on Facebook that I'm mad about it, as with other 13th century Italianists. We're all mad. And we all know it doesn't matter, right? This is big news, it's going to be interesting, but it doesn't matter. We're just mad because I work on the 13th century. All of you have a niche. You probably have disciplinary boundaries with small marginal niches. And if they were talking about your neighbor's niche as opposed to yours, when you know yours is the more interesting one, you might be a little mad in this very petty way. So someone recommended I write an op-ed. I had actually written 3 op-eds before over the previous 6 years, so it wasn't totally unfamiliar, but just 3. And I thought that was really ridiculous. Nobody would care, except for me and people like me, about the 13th century instead of the 15th century. So I wrote up this email. I'm going to show you a better way to write an email. I'm not going to read the whole email to you. I will, however, share these slides after the event so that you will all have access to them after the event. I just don't want people to see them ahead of time because I want you to encounter them with me as we go. As you can see, I wrote this email to this woman named Pat, is her name. I said, as widely reported, the last resignations of 1415, but is not being discussed is this 13th century story. This is not a great pitch. I can teach you how to write a better pitch. But I wrote it fast. I wrote it that morning. So it was, 8:58. It's actually 7:58 my time, 8:58 in New York. She's just getting started in her day. This is the big news of the day. My email comes in 2 minutes later. She says, yeah, write for me about CNN, about why the 13th century is more interesting. The point here is that we, all of us, and I mean we in this room, need to think about news from the perspective of media professionals. In particular, when news happens, people in opinion sections, and we don't only have to write for opinion sections, but opinion sections are a space at every news outlet where there is an infrastructure for someone who is not part of that outlet to propose writing for them. If you want to cover sports, today they just released the Vikings schedule. If you would like to write an essay about that for the sports section at the Star Tribune, there is no editor there waiting to take your email. There's no infrastructure for that. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but it's not set up that way. But if you had something to say about the news in the context of the Viking schedule, I don't know what that would be. You could send a pitch right now. There is somebody there for another hour who will, theoretically receive that. The infrastructure is already there. When news happens, they need content. When news happens, they get overwhelmed with people who want to write for them. And you, by leaning on your expertise and moving quickly, can be the signal in that noise. They are waiting for you. They are eager for you. But you have to show that you're ready to move onto their turf. And you have to write to these editors as the first audience. And that, I think, is one of the biggest mistakes I see, is that people who are thinking about doing this kind of work are thinking quite understandably about the reader. And the reader is, in fact, the most important person here. You really want to think about the reader. But before you can get to the reader, you have to put yourself into the contact with the editor and tell them that you know what you're doing. Tell them that you are not going to submit a 4,000-word essay in 3 weeks instead of an 800-word essay in 24 hours, that you will write in a way that will be legible to their readers, whoever they are, and the readers at CNN, and the readers at the Star Tribune, and the readers at the Chronicle of Higher Education, the readers of Nature, right? These are different readers, but whoever they are, you need to write to those readers and not the people in this room, not your peers, not the people who you write peer-reviewed specialized scholarship for, which I love peer-reviewed specialized scholarship, but that is a different writing. You need to show them, and you have to show them very fast.